All right, next up we have Hunter. And in order to understand our first card, which is Verdant Dream Saber, we need to talk about how Hunter is also one of the imbue classes. The Verdant Dream Saber is a 5-cost 4/7 with Battle Cry. If this costs 3 or less, attack 2 random enemy minions. Huh? Well, the imbue available for Hunter is Blessing of the Wolf. This means that an imbue card will change your hero power to be get a random beast, or give a random beast in your hand +1 attack. It costs 1 less. Any further upgrades to your hero power with imbue makes both of the numerical values, 1 attack and 1 less, increase. So you will give a random beast 2 attack, cost 2 less, 3 attack, 3 less, etc., etc., etc. So obviously, Verdant Dream Saber, you want to play with imbue effects in order to reduce its cost and allow its battle cry to activate, as well as make it a more powerful. You could easily make this, a 3-mana 7/7. Actually, wouldn't be a 2-mana 7/7, but yeah, that's the core element going on here. This is clearly intended to be used with the view, and we will see more cards that end up being synergistic with that. But this card, this is a little bit weird because this needs like some work in order to get going, right? You need to figure out ways to discard this, to discount this, and specifically hit this in order for it to have its effect. Without the battle cry active, it's just very bad, right? Like a 5-cost 4/7 is horrible. So you definitely need to get discounts on this in order for it to really do anything meaningful at all. And when you do, it's just clearing your opponent's board, which can be powerful, but it depends on how how valuable that is. Against like a control deck that doesn't really have significant minions, this is like maybe kills a guy. It does leave very likely a powerful body behind, but against like a larger thing, it's just going to die. So this feels like okay to me. Again, it's very dependent on what the metagame actually shapes up to look like. If there are like things that this is excellent at killing and surviving, and if you have like the time to get the imbue activations off to discount this and get it going, then maybe this is good. But it feels like it just requires a lot of work to get this to do what you want. Next up, we have Exotic Houndmaster. This is a pretty perfect card, right? This is like exactly what you want for the imbue deck. 2-cost battle cry, 2/2. Draw a beast, imbue your hero power. So the deck wants beasts. The deck wants to upgrade its hero power to have those beasts to discount and buff. This does all of it, right? This is probably the most important card in in the imbue Hunter decks. Is my guess, right? It just kind of does every single thing you want. And just a 2/2 for 2 that draws a card, like a specific type of card too, pretty reasonable, right? And then also having the imbue effect there. This is just a super, super good card. No surprise they gave it a signature version. And look at that little guy. Look at that little guy. But yeah, absolutely core card to the imbue Hunter decks. Another powerful one, Umbra Claw, a 5/2 rush with Death Rattle, imbue your hero power. So obviously this, is interestingly, this is like a beast that has, or actually this isn't a beast. Oh no, it is a beast. I was looking at something else. This being a beast that has the imbue effect, you can discount this with the imbue effect, right? Like if you draw this off of the 2-drop and then activate your hero power, and then it's like, okay, well now it costs 3, or maybe it's the only thing in your hand. You can activate your hero power again, make him bigger. Not that you necessarily care if he's going to die, if you can kill something bigger. But yeah, another just like kind of very core card. A 5-cost, rather 5 power rush minion for 4 is very likely to kill pretty much anything that's going to be on board at that point. Just very likely a very core card to these decks. And anything that imbues your hero power in the imbue decks is very going to be like, hey, I really want this in my deck for the most part, right? Obviously not necessarily the neutrals, but the class ones. Also, this one does get a signature as well. Usually a good sign that it's a card that at least the development team expects you to. Next up, we have Amphibian Spirit. This is, we got Frogger. The, what's his name? Leapfrog? Was it just Leapfrogger? I think it was Leapfrog. You just have the Battlegrounds thing. It exists. Give a minion +2/+2, and Death Rattle give a minion +2/+2 in this Death Rattle. So, obviously, this is, just a 2-cost spell that's give a minion +2/+2 in Hunter can be, like, totally fine, right? And if you have like, you know, anything that makes multiple minions for cheap, that you can like play one of them, play your thing that makes multiple minions, buff this trade, get the buff on the other one, attack. Leapfrogger, that's the name of it. Isn't that what I said? Anyway, but yeah, I think this is just a very powerful card for like a, you know, board-based hunter deck, which is basically hunter decks. Anything that's like, you know, relatively aggressive, relatively proactive. You could put this on like Amalgam, right? Giving your Amalgam this death rattle means that, you know, you just keep spreading bonuses whenever you get your Amalgam back. That is exciting to me. Next up, Spirit Bond. Deal 3 damage to a minion. If it kills it, summon a 3/2 wolf with Rush. This is reminiscent to me of Flanking Shot or Flanking Strike, which was a 4-cost spell that did 3 damage to a minion, and then just made a 3/3. This is a 3-cost spell that does 3 damage to a minion. If it kills it, you get a 3/2 with Rush. So this can kill, you know, 2 dudes, 2 like small to mid-sized dudes quite handily. Real powerful, right? You know, this in any kind of like tempo game is a super, super powerful card. So I do think this is the sort of thing that we'll definitely see a lot. Next up, we have Grace of the Great Wolf. Choose one, deal 4 damage to the enemy hero, or summon 2 3/2 wolves with Rush. This is a good example of a choose one. Do you want board control? Do you want burst? Right? Like, I think this is a really good example of a simple choose one for, you know, a class that like often needs to you know, make a decision of which type of card they want to play, and this is a card that kind of does both. I mean, 4 to face for 4 is not super efficient. The 2 dudes for 4 is like medium efficient. But I think that this is like just because of the optionality here. I think this is a card that, despite neither version being particularly powerful, does feel like it has a possible home, just because, you know, having the option is really, really good. I love this. Next, Shepherd's Crook. A 3-cost 3/2 weapon. After hero attacks, summon a 3/3 sheep that's dormant for 2 turns. I mean, if you want weapons, this is a reasonable weapon that gives you, you know, the ability to get decent damage in, decent board control. The value that you get, like attack, make a 3/3, is really good. Dormant for 2 turns though, like that means 3 turns. You know, you need 3 turns after you swing with this before the 3/3 can actually attack. It doesn't have rush. It doesn't have taunt. It is a beast, but like maybe this is a good weapon, like you know, against like control decks where like you really want, like where the dormant is kind of an advantage because you get to like build a board that your opponent like doesn't get to kill with their like sweeper effect. It just feels like it's just a little bit too slow. I mean, the stats on it are fine though, right? Like a 3-cost weapon for a 3/2 is okay. But like the sheep, I think are just, it feels like they're just a little bit too slow to be effective to me. So I do question just, you know, whether this is gonna really cut it. Next up though, we have Goldrun. 9-cost 9/9 with Rush. Friendly beasts deal double damage. Whoa boy. Oh boy. So yeah, this is not just friendly beasts deal double damage to opposing minions or anything, just double damage, right? This can just be a super powerful way to just blow your opponent up in, you know, a beast deck. You know, you just like puffer your opponent for 8, like any kind of buffs in your guys, double effect. This guy's great. And notably, it's a 9-cost 9/9, right? But that, Blessing of the Wolf, you can make this guy cost 0 with imbues, right? With your hero power. You can like keep discounting your stuff until this guy can just cost absolutely nothing and come out of nowhere and just nuke your opponent. That's cool, right? Like, obviously he can't like charge your opponent. But like if you get like this or like King Plush in the same deck and you reduce the cost of one of them, to the point you can cast both of them in the same turn, kaboom! You just blast your opponent off the face of the planet. So I'm definitely excited for Goldrun. He has been a menace in Battlegrounds for a very long time, and now he gets to be a menace in Standard too. Also, dun dun dun, signature. Look at that. That is a ferocious pup. Next up, we have Mythical Rune Bear, a 3/4 taunt for 4 with Battlecry. If this has 4 or more attack, summon a copy of this. So this can be used either with the hero power, right? If you imbue your hero power and end up buffing this, it's very effective getting multiple copies of it. If you just have like a Leok or something, Or if you like hand buff it, you know, there's a lot of ways that you can end up getting multiple copies of this. It does feel like it's just a pretty powerful card. Obviously it's pretty trash if you don't buff it, but you know, there's lots of ways to buff it, right? Like we've seen just how much hand buff stuff exists in like the current like grunter hunter decks. And those are obnoxious and suck, and I'm glad they're going away. But this is, I think, a cool and you know, powerful but fundamentally fair version of a way to use that effect. Next up, the best card in the set, Playful Pup. Look at that guy. Look at him. He's so cute. The problem with this card is that I really don't want to attack with it, right? Like, how could you let this card die? How could you possibly trade with this? Like, I guess that also, you know, gives your opponent the option to like be a monster or not. And if they do choose to kill it, you know that they should like, you know, delete the game because they don't deserve it if they're going to put this little guy through that kind of terrible fate. I think this is actually the token for the rush things, but it doesn't actually say token on the thing I have. I hope it's actually a card. It doesn't just say wolf or anything, right? This feels like it should actually be a card. Anyway, lastly, we have Brawl Bear Mental. After you cast a spell, summon a random animal companion. He's cool. Obviously, like, you know, like this guy in like Discover Hunter, where you have like just, you know, the ability to generate like a ton of trackings. You know, any hunter deck that's just playing a ton of like cheap spells. You know, this has a lot of the, you know, ability to be effective, right? I don't know that there's necessarily like great use for it in a lot of decks right now, because like in order to play this, in order for this to be good, you have to either play a 5-cost 3/5, right? And have it survive, or you have a lot of mana and play this and play like 3 spells, 2 or 3 spells. He's cool. Like I don't know where this goes, right? You know, like it's not a beast itself, so you can't discount it. There's not like really like, great ways to like discount hunter spells, so it feels like it's a challenge to get this to be particularly effective. Hunter's not exactly a class that like, you know, just kind of sits back and builds up to a turn super well. Obviously, we are just talking about Grunter Hunter, so it can do that. But like this is a much less explosive way of building up to something. You're building up to making a bunch of dudes, right? Not like killing your opponent in a single turn. So you know, I think this is like it's a cool card. I just don't know how effective a card it is because there aren't necessarily things that are particularly synergistic with it. Maybe this goes in Discover Hunter and you use it alongside like the discounted both obviously making copies of trackings or whatever, but like discounted to 0 alien encounters, right? Like maybe this is a card that just because that deck can generate so many cheap things, that this can be just a way to have like even more explosive, or just an alternate way to have explosive. Overall, I think Hunter is a very cool class here. I always love when there are Hunter archetypes that are supported, that are not just, you know, Smork, right? And Goldrin can Smork, but it is more like a get to the point of setting up my Smork, and you know the interplay of your imbue hero power and like the various other things. There's just a lot of good like solid mid-rangey stuff. Like I said, I think this is the best hunter card in the set is this guy, right? This does so much work. Also, you know, has an adorable pup in both versions of the card, so how can you really get better? And then, you know, I like I said, I really like hunter decks that are not just playing aggro and nuking you down with their hero power. Replacing your hero power with something that does not do damage to your opponent directly is cool, right? And there's a lot of possible utility, you know, figuring out, okay, well, what mix of beasts do I want? What are the best ways to, you know, make use of this? Like, how do I, you know, best enable like making Goldrin powerful or making this guy work, right? I think there's a lot of interesting puzzles to solve in deck building and interesting decision making gameplay with the imbue, with all of these various things to take advantage of. So I'm stoked about these hunter cards, and this is like probably the most excited that I have been to play a hunter deck in a long time. So very much looking forward to wooing with Blessing of the Wolf. All right, next up we have Mage, and Mage in this set to me looks very, very fun. And of course, we do need to start once again with the imbue hero power. Their hero power imbue is Blessing of the Wisp. So it's important to understand this to understand the context of a lot of the other cards. But Blessing of the Wisp changes their hero power into Summon a Wisp. Deal 1 damage randomly split among all enemies. So obviously, as an imbue effect, every time that you imbue your hero power, the numerical value increases. So first time, it turns it from your regular hero power into this. Second time, it summons 2 wisps, deals 2, 3 wisps, deals 3, etc., etc., etc. So, this is obviously, like kind of giving you a bit of a skeleton mage vibe for those who remember like the skeleton mage with Kel'Thuzad and things like that. That you're looking to just like build out stuff on the board, sort of nuke your opponent over time as you upgrade your hero power and do that. And there, of course, are finishers like this, Asna or Asina, a very Kel'Thuzad like, even a 6/8 like Kel'Thuzad. If 20 friendly minions have died this game, deal 20 damage split among all enemies. So as you keep spewing out wisp after wisp after wisp, they die, and then ta-da, you just nuke your opponent for 20. And obviously you've been chipping away with the Blessing of the Wisp hero power. So this is very likely going to be a way that lots and lots of Mage game end, or rather Mage games end. And of course there is this kind of cosmic looking signature version that is going to be very cool. So I do think that this, obviously without context of the hero power, doesn't make any sense, right? Mage isn't exactly a class that has tons of minion summoning, and 20 is a big number. But when you're making continuously increasing numbers of wisps every turn, it is very likely to get online and nuke your opponent down from whatever life total they're left at after you've chipped away with your wisp. So next up, we have Kwanzu. This is super weird. 3 cost 3/4 beast. Battlecry, discover a spell, choose to keep it or put it on top of your opponent's deck. So yeah, this you discover, and then you pick a spell, and then it's like, do I want this or do I want to give it to my opponent, put it on their deck? Like it's a good card, right? Like the 3 cost 3/4 that discovers a spell. Baseline, right? That's a good card, right? But the like it feels so strange as a legendary, right? This feels like it's just a card. And the obviously the legendary part is choose to keep it or put it on top of your opponent's deck, because that's weird. But it just feels like it's not like a crazy impactful thing. It's not the sort of card you like can build a deck around. It's just like, okay, there's this one sort of weird moment in the game where you can deny your opponent a card draw, which is neat, but also like, huh? I don't know. It's like it's fine. It just feels very strange as a legendary to me, right? Obviously, like yes, like you get good options, you can keep them, right? Like you get 3 bad cards. It's like, I don't want any of these. I'll give you a bad one. Then you have both some information about what your opponent has and deny them a draw. It's just like it's just such a weird effect. So I that's my only It just feels also very very strange to use one of the 2 legends that Mage gets on like just this kind of quirky effect rather than something which is like, in any meaningful way a build around. Anyway, it's good. It's just weird. Next up, Wisp Rider. Battlecry, imbue your hero power, then trigger it. It's a 5 cost 4/4, right? But obviously, like, it's a 5 cost 4/4 that comes along with bare minimum a wisp and a damage to your opponent's stuff, right? And it could be more depending on what how many times you've imbued over the course of the game. I do feel like if you're playing the sort of like wisp mage, you probably want this just because you're likely to want to be building up toward your Asna. The imbue effect itself is powerful. If you think of like like spending 3 or spending 2 mana on your hero power, you're basically spending 3 mana for the 4/4 here. That is also upgrading your hero power. Obviously, it's not quite that, but like I think this card looks bad, but my gut instinct is that it is much better than you think. Next up, Forbidden Shrine, a 1 cost location, 1/3. Spend all your mana, cast a random spell that costs that much. Super weird. Like this doesn't count as a spell, an actual spell cast, right? Because it's coming from this, I assume. Random spells are like generally not that good, and it uses all your mana. This card just feels very bad to me. I don't know, like, maybe there are ways to, like, sacrifice locations and having a 1/3 location ends up being good, but otherwise, oh baby, this card is bad. Next we have Divination. It's weird that this is just Divination to me, but it's a 2-cost spell. Destroy friendly wisps, draw 3 cards. Obviously with the hero power, generating a bunch of wisps, bare minimum, right? If you have the imbue effects, this ends up being 4 mana, draw 3, because you just activate your hero power. And if you actually play, you know, like have a wisp on the board, it can be cheap. But yeah, I mean, this is just powerful. Yeah, eat the wisp, like eat the imp, but wisp only. I do think that card is just good, right? Like if you are imbuing your hero power, it's very easy to use, very easy to get your wisps. You can have weird situations where you just don't draw imbue cards and this card rots in your hand. But that's, you know, going to be a larger scale problem for just the way that your deck functions. Speaking of, Spirit Gatherer. 2/1 for 2. Battle cry, get a wisp. Imbue your hero power. The wisp itself, you can save it for your divination, right? You don't have to spend the mana to do that. That's probably the most likely use of that wisp. But yeah. If you're playing an imbue deck, you want to play the imbue cards. This is, you know, the on-class imbue cards are generally going to be very effective. Yeah, it is, you know, bare minimum Murloc Tidehunter. Not that Murloc Tidehunter is exactly the gold standard, but you know, it's an imbue card. You want to imbue your cards. There you go. You're probably going to play it if you're playing imbue deck. Next up, we have Spark of Life. Choose one, discover a mage spell or discover a druid spell. Weird card, right? I don't know necessarily why you would want like druid spells specifically. Maybe you're looking for armor, you know, maybe you want to try and find like healing or armor or something, so you're gonna dig into druids, but it's kind of a weird card. I don't know. Feels like it's, unless you're playing a deck that cares about cards from outside the game for whatever reason, it feels like a weird card to play. Just like play the card you want to play. Next up, Stellar Balance. Get a Moonfire and a Starfire. Give them spell damage +1. This would have been a hell of a card for Sith Mage. This is kind of like, right? You can think of this as 2 mana, deal 2, draw a Starfire, right? Draw a buffed Starfire. Starfire is obviously a very bad card, but you know, like you get both, and you can just, if there's nothing to shoot, you can just play this and get them. It's another sort of situation of like, okay, well, why do I want? Is there a particular reason I want arcane spells? A particular reason I want like 0-cost things in a, you know, in a deck that like specifically cares about like trying to blow up your opponent in a single turn? Getting Moonfire can be very effective. There aren't really like Sith style cards that are still in standard, but you know, this is a sort of card that, like, I think on its surface is probably not very good, but like as you end up developing, you know, more of the card pool, things that care about cards that didn't start in your deck, things that care about, you know, cards from other classes, all that, things that care about, you know, 0-cost cards, any number of things. This does have more potential, but I think the sort of immediate impact of it in standard is likely. Next up, Merry Moonkin. A turn, gain an armor. Repeat for each wisp you control. I do think that this is, you know, like just a 3/6 that gains you armor by itself. Actually not bad, right? Like the survivability that you gain from this in a deck that wants to play a longer game, I think is actually quite high. With your hero power generating wisps, this could be just repeatedly gaining you a bunch of armor each turn. It's, you know, another reason to hold on to the wisp that you generate from your 2-drop. But yeah, I think this is actually like, I love cards like this in Mage that give you a way to survive. And you know, this one in particular is like, this is reusable. This feels like very like, you know, Artificer or Illuminator to me, things that like just, you know, if your opponent does not deal with, will like really help you sustain your life total very heavily. And you know, again, with your hero power generating wisps, you're very likely to start turns with a wisp or 2 in play, you know. So this could very easily be generating like 3, 4, 5 armor a turn. And that can be doing a lot of work. And lastly, Star Surge. A 3-cost spell that's deal 1 damage to a minion, improved by each friendly minion that died this game. Fine. You know, like obviously, this can do like 4,000 to a minion if you have all these wisps die. But I don't know how much you care about, you know, spending 3 mana to deal 4,000 to a minion. Obviously, if your opponents are playing like Brain Masseuse or whatever, you just blow them up. If this could go face, it'd be the most insane card of all time, right? But it only hits a minion, so you know, like it depends on the metagame. if it is a metagame where there are large minions that you want to be able to remove for cheap that don't have death rattles, don't have elusive, maybe this card's good, right? But it feels fairly mediocre to me, just because, again, it is limited to minions, and you already have lots of powerful tools, generally speaking, in Mage to deal with stuff. Although with, maybe just dealing with big things, it costs 3, right? The base is 1. It's just such a bad card for so long. This isn't even like a, borderline good card until you've had 4 minions die. So I don't know. This just doesn't feel like it's very likely to be a particularly compelling card. But it does have sweet signature version, so maybe it'll get buffed. So people want the cool signature. But yeah, overall, that's the last of the Mage cards. I really like this set of Mage cards. Historically, I've really enjoyed Mage decks that are looking to play like a longer, incremental damage-based game. I love this guy. I love the Merry Moonkin. I love the hero power upgrade. I think that it creates like a really interesting style of gameplay for Mage that's like, not one turn kill oriented, though it does have the possibility to do big burst damage here with Asina. But notably, this is only 20 damage, and your opponent's board absorbs it. So it's not the sort of thing where it's just like, okay, I can just nuke you down. There is counterplay to it. Because your opponent does, can build a board up, can heal above 20. Obviously, if you just imbue your hero power 8 million times, maybe your hero power is just doing like, 7 a turn and filling your board. But then maybe their counterplay is they never kill one of your wisps because you can't ping them off with your own hero power. So it's interesting. But yeah, overall, I do think this is a very cool and exciting set of cards, and I'm excited to wisp people to death. Yeah. All right, next up we have Paladin. Paladin is maybe the class that I am the most excited about, both because they have themselves a dragon theme, and also they have a really sweet imbue going on, which is Blessing of the Dragon, which is shuffle 2 emerald portals into your deck, and then your portals summon 1-cost dragons, and the portals themselves are, let me see if I actually pull that up. Do they have it in here? Where is it? Is this? Here it is. Emerald Portal is a cast when drawn, summon a random cost dragon. The number is what increments when you imbue your hero power. So as you imbue your hero power, it becomes 2-cost dragon, 3-cost dragon, 4-cost dragon, etc., etc., etc. So obviously, as a random effect enjoyer, and a dragon enjoyer, and generally a mid-range paladin enjoyer, a lot going on here that I enjoy. So let's start taking a look at Paladin, which starts with Dragon Scale Armaments. 1-cost Holy Spell. Draw a card that started in your deck and one that didn't. So right off the bat, this makes a lot more sense when you consider the fact that Blessing of the Dragon, the imbue, puts spells into your deck. So baseline, 1-cost, draw a spell. And that by itself is not terrible. But once you actually get your imbues going and activate your hero power, this immediately gets you one of your spells. Also, anything else, even outside of the imbues, are potentially ways that shuffle things in your deck. Fizzle, you can draw your photograph immediately. If you're looking to do something like that. There's been lots of cards like that. Any kind of like cast when drawn effect, this can be extremely powerful with. But yeah, I do think this card is very good, and is likely to be a major element of a lot of these Paladin decks, whether they are imbue decks or not. Next up, Mark of Ursal. This is basically Keeper Voldemon, but a spell. Choose a minion. If it's an enemy, set it sets to 1/1. If it's friendly, set it sets to 3/3. I do think this is worse than like Keeper Voldemon was because you don't get a body attached. But it's interesting having sort of like modal. Like, do I need to deal with a big thing, or do I want to buff a little dude to 1? And I think that's pretty sweet. So yeah, I think this is a fine card. I don't think it's an amazing card. But because of the flexibility of it, I could definitely see it having some amount of. Next up, we have Ursine Maul. After your hero attacks, draw your highest cost card. 4-cost 4/2 weapon is medium. It's not bad, but it's not great. but this is, also basically attached to 2 card draw, and it is 2 like targeted card draw, which can be very effective, right? There are cards. I'm actually just going to jump to one of those cards that definitely is a very powerful tool with this, which is Ursol itself. Hey, it's in the name. It has synergy with it. It's an 8-cost 9/7 with Battlecry. Cast the highest cost spell from your hand as an aura that lasts 3 turns. So, if you have basically this guy and other high cost spells, you can keep getting more instances of those spells. You get to cast your spell like 3 times. And the Ursine Maul draws Ursol and then also draws your high cost spell and enables it, right? One of those high cost spells, which are also, by the way, Ursol, another sweet signature. Look at that guy. But one of those high cost spells you can draw is Renewing Flames, a 7-cost nature spell, which is very unusual in Paladin. But Lifesteal, deal 5 damage to the lowest health enemy twice. So this is gain 10 life and potentially nuke your opponent into oblivion, right? This is lowest health enemy, not lowest health enemy minion. So this, Renewing Flames, along with Ursol, if your opponent never plays another card, they die, because you just lifesteal them for 30 over 3 turns. They probably will play something, but, if you clear their stuff, this just kills them, right? So Renewing Flames, this card is real powerful, right? This card by itself, I think, is actually just quite a powerful card. It can just be 10 to you, right? Your opponent has no board. This is Lifesteal Pyroblast to the face, right? If your opponent has a board, this can be, wipe out 2 of your minions. It could be, kill 1 big minion. It could be, in bad case scenario, kill 2 wisps, right? But it's also gain 10 life. And if you're, getting incrementally blasted, by the Mage Hero Power or whatever, there is definitely that risk. But obviously, if you have other things to kill your opponent's board with, like random dragons you got off your portals, you end up in a better spot. But overall, I think that this is just a very powerful individual card, and obviously the combination with Ursol is extremely potent. You don't need Ursol necessarily to make this card good. I think this card is just good, and I do expect it to see a good chunk of play. Next up, we have Dream Warden. 4-cost 3/4 taunt with Battlecry. If there's a card in your deck that didn't start there, draw it and gain +2/+2. So if you have shuffled an Emerald Portal into your deck with your hero power, and you play this, you get a 5/6 taunt and whatever you summon off of the thing for 4. Obviously, like that, takes some setup. You're not necessarily going to just be able to do that on turn 4, but that's real strong. Right? Yeah, if you just have like Miracle Whale Salesman, who is rotating. Fizzle's also rotating, so you can't do that with Fizzle, like I mentioned in the first card. But cards like that, right? These are not the only cards that exist in that kind of thing. And obviously internally, with the infused stuff, have that opportunity. So yeah, I think this has potential to be pretty strong. It does have the awkward situation where you draw it, and it's like, this is a 3/4 taunt for 4. This sucks. But I assume if you're building a deck that is looking to infuse your hero power, you're going to do that in as focused a way as you can in a particular deck that is going to play synergy-based cards like this, that rely on them. Next up, Lightmender. 4-cost 3/3 taunt. Choose 1 +3 attack and Divine Shield, or +3 health and Lifesteal. This is a pretty interesting card. Against like the fact that it can be a 3/6 lifesteal taunt against a control deck or against an aggro deck, very good. A 6/3 divine shield against a control deck, also good. It doesn't have a minion type. I think like if this was a dragon, it had like synergy with some sort of stuff. Yeah, I think a lot more appealing. But I do think this is like a pretty reasonable card. It's nothing that I'm like, I'm going to build a deck because of this. But it does feel like it has the possibility to be like a solid role player in just like a mid-range deck if it isn't typo based. Next up, Toreth the Unbreaking. A 3/4 for 5 with Divine Shield and Taunt. Your Divine Shields take 3 hits to break. This is a kind of wild effect, right? Like it is, against like anything that isn't doing just like a bunch of spread damage or has silence effects or transform effects, any like kind of like mid-range-ish thing. This card is bananas, right? Like you have the, you play your 6/3, dude or whatever on 4. You play like just a bunch of Divine Shield guys with this, and it's like, okay, everything is incredibly hard to kill. Also, sweet signature. But yeah, I think this you need to have some sort of silence effect, some sort of just direct destroy effect. It is worth noting that Black Knight is back with tradable, so this is the sort of thing that could easily get Black Knighted. But it is I think a very powerful card if it isn't immediately removed by one of those effects. Very difficult for a lot of decks to handle, and by itself not super threatening, but can make the rest of your stuff very hard to kill. Next up, Aegis of Light. Summon a random 1-cost minion and give it taunt. Imbue your hero power. Well, speaking of things that can get your hero power imbued right away, this is obviously like by itself weak card, right? 1-cost, 1-cost dude with taunt, pretty bad. But imbue your hero power, being able to cast this on turn 1. Turn 2, you could potentially, use your hero power and shuffle your dragon portals into your deck, and then you've already enabled stuff like this guy, right? So this card by itself weak, but the imbue effect is something that you want a critical mass of in decks that are trying to use it, and you can afford to use individual cards that their specific effect is not that powerful. By the way, sweet signature, but sort of end up kind of snowballing into the rest of your deck functioning more powerful. And next up, Gold Petal Drake, kind of the bread and butter, right, of this strategy. A 3-cost 3/4 with Battlecry and Death Rattle, imbue your hero power. So most of the classes have, they have 2 cards that are imbue cards, and there are neutral imbue cards, which we'll also get to. This one is, imbue twice, right? So you're gonna obviously like with a hero power imbue that is more of like a long game grindy thing, because you're not even getting the dragons right away. You need to have like the value of, hey, these dragons need to get bigger and bigger and bigger for them to feel like they matter enough. But this guy, is great, right? He's totally decent stats for the cost. Very cool signature version. And getting multiple triggers of the imbue allows you to get those dragons rolling and have your portals be scary enough that they matter. So overall, like I said, I do think that Paladin is probably the class that I am the most excited about, just because it is the exact style of gameplay that I really enjoy. I love playing these incremental value style games. I love playing dragons. I love like finding ways to win through unexpected means, and just like fighting for board, fighting for, it almost feels like the soul of Hearthstone, right? Like random stuff is kind of central to the identity of Hearthstone, and board control, like fighting, battling back and forth with minions. That's kind of everything that this style of Paladin deck does, and plus there's dragons. So I love it, and I'm super looking forward to playing with Gold Petal Drake and friends come both theory crafting and release.